The shuttle landed with a soft hiss on the wide landing deck of Meridian City. Ethan Ward stepped out and looked up at the tall towers shining like silver glass under the morning sun. The air smelled clean and bright, filled with the hum of machines and voices. He had come to this world, Halcyon, to work as a systems engineer for the new defense network. He thought his life here would be plain and busy, all numbers, screens, and long hours. He had no idea that his work and his quiet heart were about to be pulled into something greater than he could imagine. People in uniforms moved around the deck, greeting him and other new workers. Ethan followed an officer through a hall made of white stone and golden light. The officer talked about duty shifts and safety codes, but Ethan was only half listening. He had seen cities before, even on distant planets. But there was something different about Meridian. It was not only beautiful, it seemed alive, as if history itself breathed through its walls. The hall opened into a large balcony overlooking the city. Roads curved between shining domes, and lines of silver trains floated along blue tracks in the air. Beyond the city, green plains stretched toward the mountains, dotted with wind towers turning slowly in the golden sky. For the first time in a long time, Ethan felt something like hope. The world looked peaceful, perfect even, and he wished it would stay that way. At the palace gates, officers asked for his clearance files. He handed them over and took a moment to take in the sight of the palace itself, built of white marble, its edges traced with soft blue light. It looked less like a fortress and more like a dream someone had dared to build. This was where Princess Leora lived, the first royal to show open interest in the new defense project. Most royals preferred research or ceremony, not military work, so people whispered that she must be unusual. Inside, Ethan joined a group of engineers waiting in the great hall. Sunlight poured through high crystal windows, forming golden circles across the marble floor. A tall man in formal robes stepped forward and said clearly, "Her Highness will attend this meeting in person." Murmurs broke out. Some workers frowned nervously. Ethan stayed quiet, wondering if a royal would really waste time listening to an engineer talk about satellite codes. Then she entered. Leora was wearing a plain white dress, but there was nothing plain about her. She moved like someone who had practiced grace since birth. Her dark hair fell over her shoulders, and her eyes shone with quiet confidence. Ethan could tell she was young, but wisdom seemed to hang around her like air. Everyone bowed. Ethan did too, unsure if he was doing it right. The princess spoke only a few words. "We welcome those who guard our world. Let us work not as ranks, but as hands of one home." Her voice was steady, calm, almost musical. It echoed through the hall and rested softly in Ethan's ears. When she sat near the front table, her attendants placed a folder of reports before her. Ethan noticed she read quickly, making notes with precision that could put any analyst to shame. When his turn came to speak, he stood and explained his system, the network of defense satellites linked through synchronized codes and power relays. His voice trembled at first, but the princess watched him with clear attention. That gaze steadied him, and soon he spoke with focus and pride for his work. When he finished, silence followed. Then she smiled slightly. "You speak not only of systems," she said. "You speak of trust. Networks of trust defend nations better than walls of iron." Her words left the engineers glancing at one another, unsure if it was praise or a challenge, but Ethan caught something else in her tone: curiosity. The meeting continued with plans and projections, yet he kept feeling her eyes on him from time to time. It was not uncomfortable, just strange, as if she were studying him deeper than his reports. For the rest of the day, Ethan's mind would not quiet down. Why did she care so much about this program? Why did her words sound almost personal, like she had a stake beyond duty? When the meeting ended, he walked outside again into the evening air. The twin moons were rising, their light turning the white towers silver and blue. The city shone like a dream waiting to wake. Ethan stopped beside a fountain and watched the reflections shimmer across the water. Somewhere inside that grand palace, a princess had looked at him as though she saw more than an engineer. He tried to shake off the thought, telling himself it was nothing. Yet as the night wind passed, he felt something shift quietly inside him, a strange pull. Like the beginning of a story that had already been written, waiting only for him to take the next step. 2 weeks had passed since the great meeting at the palace. Ethan Ward had fallen into a quiet rhythm of work. Each morning he walked through the wide halls, spoke a few polite words to the guards, and spent long hours watching lines of data move across his screen. The system was almost ready, and soon the entire defense grid would link up between the towers, ready to protect every town and city on Halcyon. Yet his thoughts were not always on his work. He thought often of Princess Leora. It was not only because of her graceful manner or her calm voice. There was something about her eyes that stayed in his memory. She seemed to carry the weight of something she could not speak about. Sometimes he would see her walking alone along the high balcony above the main data room, hands folded behind her back, gazing at the sky. She looked like she belonged there, but also as if she longed to be somewhere else. That evening, Ethan left the data tower late. The corridors were almost empty. I wanted to finish the new link between the outer grids, he said quickly. The system will be fully active by morning. She moved closer, and the calm in her eyes softened. You work like someone who does not sleep. He tried to smile. Machines do not wait, Your Highness. Her lips curved slightly, neither do worries. She looked up at the shining towers. Do you believe the system will keep us safe? Yes, Ethan said. If we trust each other and use it wisely, it will. She nodded, but did not look at him. There is much fear in this city. Some think humans are growing too proud. Others whisper that machines will rule us. They forget that hearts make choices, not wires. She turned her gaze to him again, and for a moment he felt as if she were seeing through him. My council doubts your work. They think Earthborn engineers care only for results. But I have watched you. You care for people. He opened his mouth, but found no words to reply. Before he could speak, a sharp sound echoed through the courtyard, a low alarm tone, distant but clear. The princess froze. A guard ran down the steps, shouting that unknown signals had appeared near the orbital ring. Ethan felt his chest tighten. The defense system is not yet active, he said quickly. It will take hours to link the relays. She looked at him with sudden resolve. Then we must act now. Within minutes, they reached the control room. Red lights flashed along the ceiling. Reports crowded the screens. Something was stirring beyond the horizon. Rogue machines from the old wars, long thought destroyed, now coming alive again. The officers looked to the princess for command. Activate all towers manually, Leora ordered. Engineer Ward will lead the link from the main console. Ethan sat before the controls, hands flying over the keys, eyes fixed on the streams of data. His system was meant to run automatically, but he could still start the first chain by command. Codes blinked red one after another, waiting for his signal. He called to the operators at each station, guiding them in calm, quick words. Hours passed, and the air inside the room grew thick with heat and fear. The sound of the alarms never stopped. Leora stood beside him the whole time, reading reports, giving orders that kept the crew steady. Once, when he hesitated, her hand touched his shoulder lightly. You can do this, she said. Her voice was quiet but strong. That small gesture steadied his heart more than any command could. At last, all towers lit green across the main screen. The satellites locked into formation high above the planet. A bright wave of light crossed the sky outside, marking the shield's activation. The rogue machines in orbit began to fall apart as the new defense beams cut through their signals. The room filled with cheers. Officers clapped each other on the arms, shouting with relief. Yet for a moment, Ethan could not move. His hands trembled, still resting on the console. The princess turned to him and smiled for the first time. It was not a royal smile meant for a crowd, but a real and quiet one. You have saved more lives than you know, she said softly. He swallowed, trying to catch his breath. I only followed the plan, he replied. No, she said, moving a little closer. You followed your heart. That is what made the plan work. Then, before the others could see, she leaned near him and whispered something he would never forget. Her breath brushed his ear like a secret flame. My people say, you are one of us now, she murmured. He turned to meet her eyes, and for a moment the noise in the room faded. The world outside could fall to pieces, and he would still remember her words at that moment. Under the soft light of the control screens and the silver glow through the window, Ethan Ward realized his life had changed forever. The morning after the attack, the whole city of Meridian hummed with new life. The streets that had been full of fear the night before now carried songs of thanks. People hung banners from their balconies, and messengers delivered notes of praise to the palace. The defense towers stood silent and strong against the blue sky like steady guardians. Still, inside the marble halls, quiet tension remained. Ethan Ward woke after only a few hours of sleep. His room felt smaller than usual, the air heavy with thoughts he could not quiet. The words of the princess echoed in his mind again and again. My people say, you are one of us now. He wondered if she had only spoken kindly, in the moment, or if those words carried deeper meaning. No one had ever said something like that to him before. When he stepped into the main corridor, the first thing he saw was guards lining the hall. They were dressed in bright white uniforms, but stood stiff with unease. The head officer moved toward him. Engineer Ward, the man said, the council is called for an inquiry. The princess has named you in her official report. You saved the city. But some among the council want to know how you controlled the royal defense systems without proper clearance. Ethan nodded slowly. I understand. I will tell them everything. He was taken to the council chamber. A wide room, shaped like a circle, with gold seats arranged around a tall floor of white glass. The air smelled faintly of metal and old perfume. There were 12 members of the council, all watching him with unreadable eyes. At the center sat Princess Leora, dressed again in white, calm and composed. She met Ethan's gaze for only a second before turning to speak. This man acted in defense of our home, she said to the council. He made choices when time gave none. By his hands our city stands. The council leader, a thin man with gray hair, lifted his chin. Your Highness, no one questions his skill or his courage, but procedure exists for a reason. We must know if the engineer acted under guidance or for his own glory. Ethan could feel all eyes on him. He swallowed hard and said, I did what I had to do. No one else could start the network fast enough. I made the final call, but every step followed the purpose I was sent here for. I never meant to break any rule. The leader studied him in silence, then turned toward Leora. You were in the control room, Your Highness? Did you order him to act? She did not answer right away. Her hands rested on the edge of the table, fingers still, eyes bright. I did, she said at last. A ripple of shock ran through the room. I ordered him to start the network because the safety of this planet is my duty. If there is blame, let it fall on me. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the leader sighed. So be it. May not punish courage nor wisdom. Let it be written that both Engineer Ward and Her Highness acted with honor. The session ended, and the crowd slowly left. When the hall had emptied, Leora remained seated, looking down at the floor as if lost in some private cloud of thought. Ethan stood quietly until she rose to face him. You should not have taken blame, he said softly. Her eyes lifted to his, calm yet deep as night water. Blame means little when peace is the reward. What matters is that my people live. He shook his head. No, Your Highness, I cannot let you carry that alone. She smiled faintly. No. Then carry it with me. They walked out into the open courtyard together. The air was cool, and thin rays of light spilled between the white columns. Nearby, children laughed and chased each other, unaware of how close the city had come to destruction. Do you ever wish you were ordinary? She asked suddenly. The question startled him. Ordinary? No crown? No command? Yes, she said. Just a person. Free to choose without watching eyes. Free to laugh without it becoming news. Ethan looked at her profile, her silent strength, the grace she carried even in weariness. I think everyone wishes for that sometimes. But maybe the world needs some people who can never be ordinary. She turned to him then, and met his gaze with quiet warmth. And what do you think this world needs you to be, Ethan Ward? He paused, searching for an answer. Still learning, he said at last. But I know this after last night, I will never walk away from this city. Not while I can help it. Then we stand together, she said softly. The soldiers call you the Protector now. They believe you carry luck in your hands. Ethan laughed under his breath. I hope they are right. The wind moved between the columns, carrying their voices toward the shining towers beyond. The princess reached out her hand for a moment and touched his sleeve. It was a small motion, barely seen, but it sent a silent message that bound them in understanding. That night, Ethan looked out from the balcony of his small room. The stars hung steady above the calm city. Far below, lanterns flickered along the streets. He thought of the princess's eyes, her courage, her quiet trust. The whisper of destiny had already reached him, though neither knew where it would lead. All he knew was that something unspoken had begun between them. It was not duty now, but the bond of two hearts chosen by the same world. The days after the council meeting passed quietly, yet a strange feeling hung in the air. The city of Meridian seemed calm, but Ethan Ward could sense unease beneath the calm surface. People had begun to speak his name with respect and pride, but also with some doubt. Some said the engineer from Earth had brought safety. Others whispered that the princess had broken royal law for him. The stories grew faster than truth could travel. Ethan stayed busy in the command hall, completing tests on the defense system and checking every line of code. When he worked, the world made sense. But whenever his thoughts drifted to Princess Leora, everything around him blurred. He told himself that their friendship was built on duty and trust, yet each time she spoke to him, he felt his heart answering before his mind could. One morning, a young guard hurried into the control room, breathless. "Sir, the princess requests your presence at once," he said. The fog followed the guard through the high corridors and up a grand stairway. The air grew cooler as they reached the upper tower. The view from there stretched far over the glowing city and the green plains beyond. Inside, Princess Leora stood beside a tall glass wall, her back to him. She turned when he entered. "Ethan," she said softly, using his name for the first time, without his title. "There is something you must see." She walked to a small console near the window and touched a key. The lights dimmed, and a screen came alive with a map of the southern region.
Oh.
Red points pulsed along the edge of the gray mountains. "These are weak signals," she said, "but they are moving. Someone is trying to reach the reactor facility near the desert belt. If they gain control of it, no defense network can stop them." Ethan frowned. "The third sun reactor."
Yeah.
"I thought its codes were locked decades ago." "They were," she said. "Only the royal family has access to the key sequence. But now those codes have been duplicated. I fear someone among our own has betrayed us." He stepped forward. "Then we must go there and stop whoever is behind it. We cannot send soldiers blind. The system needs manual resets at the core." She looked at him steadily. "It will be dangerous?" "Then it should be me," he said simply. "I built the new relay codes. I know how to shut it down." Leora shook her head. "You cannot go alone." "I will not," Ethan replied. "But if those systems fall into the wrong hands, everything we built will be wasted." After a long pause, she nodded. "I will come with you." Ethan stared at her, shocked. But you are the princess?" She lifted her chin. "I am also the keeper of the reactor key. No one else can activate or seal it. If I stay behind, Halcyon may not survive." Her resolve left no room for protest. Within hours, they left Meridian by flight transport, traveling over vast stretches of desert under the dim light of the twin suns. The sky glowed pale orange and gold. For a time, neither spoke. The engine hummed quietly, steady like a heartbeat. When night came, they stopped near an old outpost. The ruins looked abandoned, half buried under sand. Ethan built a small light fire while Leora sat nearby, wrapping her cloak around her shoulders. The silence between them was tender and heavy at once. "I used to come here as a child," she said quietly. "My father would bring me to see the horizon. He said this world was our promise to the stars. He believed peace could be guarded by faith, not only by weapons." Ethan listened in stillness. "He was right," he said, "but the world makes us build walls anyway." She smiled faintly. "Do you ever tire of being the one who fixes broken things?" He smiled back every day. "But fixing things is the only way I know to keep hope alive." The quiet night stretched around them. Wind moved through the old ruins, whispering soft echoes like voices from long ago. When she looked at him, the firelight danced in her eyes. He met her gaze, and for a moment, the distance between prince and worker faded away. There were only two souls who carried the same burden of duty. Before dawn, they reached the mountains. The reactor tower rose before them, dark and silent against the pale sky. Its metal walls were scarred by time. Inside, the corridor pulsed faintly with dull red lights. Ethan walked ahead with a scanner in his hand, while Leora followed with steady steps. They reached the main chamber where the control core rested behind a sealed gate. The faint hum of power filled the air. He noticed fresh footprints in the dust. "They are already here," he said in a low voice. Without warning, a sharp alarm rang through the tower. Ethan ran forward, pressing codes on the panel. Sparks flew, lights flickered, and the great doors began to slide open. Behind them, the hum grew louder as power surged. Leora's hand found his arm. "We must stop it, or the core will overload," she whispered. Ethan turned to her and nodded once. Together then, their hands moved in rhythm across the console, typing commands, breaking locks, fighting the rising heat. Sweat ran down Ethan's face, but he did not slow. He was not fighting for duty now. He was fighting for her, for the promise she carried in her heart, for the city that had given him belonging. At last, with one final code entered by both of them at once, the system calmed. The red lights faded to soft white. The tower went still again. Leora let out a slow breath and looked at him with quiet relief. "You saved us again," she said. He shook his head. "No, we saved each other." Outside, the first light of morning touched the mountains. The world below waited in peace, unaware of how close it had come to ruin. Among the fading echoes of the reactor, two figures stood side by side, knowing that their journey together was far from over. When the morning sun climbed over the high ridges, the tower stood quiet. The danger was over, yet the weight of what had happened still pressed heavy in the air. Ethan and Princess Leora stood side by side, watching streams of golden light pour through breaks in the clouds. The dust of the long night still covered their faces, but a strange peace filled their eyes. They began their journey back to Meridian, flying low over silver plains and calm lakes. The silence between them was gentle now, not tense like before. As the city's tall towers came into view, Ethan saw that it looked as bright and perfect as ever. But he knew that everything inside that palace would soon change. When they landed, officials rushed forward, bowing to the princess and welcoming her home. Reports had already gone out about the threat. For the first time, the people of Meridian learned that their safety had come at great risk. And they learned of the two who had stopped the disaster. In the following days, celebrations filled the city. Bells rang, lights shone from every balcony, and crowds filled the plaza beneath the palace. Ethan found himself standing among them, feeling half proud and half lost. He had never been the center of honor before. He was used to shadows, machines, and quiet work. But now, he was known across the world as the man who had saved the reactor and protected the princess herself. A public ceremony was held inside the wide marble hall of the palace. The air carried the scent of flowers and silver incense. Leora stood on the raised platform, dressed in deep blue, her crown shining under the lights. Ethan stood beside her, wearing the polished uniform given to him by the royal guards. The same council that once questioned him now looked at him with respect. Leora spoke before the people. Her voice carried clear and calm across the great room. "Our peace was not kept by blood or crown," she said. "It was kept by courage, by a man who came to our world not to rule it, but to serve it. He showed us that unity is our greatest weapon." The hall echoed with cheers as she turned toward Ethan. Her eyes softened as she raised a small silver ring shaped like a circle of light. "Let it be known that Ethan Ward is now guardian of Meridian," she said. "His duty will be to protect all homes, not as my servant, but as my equal." Ethan bowed slightly, still unsure how to accept such honor. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "everything I did because this world became my home. And because of you." The room fell silent at his words. Leora's gaze held his a moment longer, then she smiled. "Home belongs to those who defend it," she said, and the crowd erupted in joy again. After the ceremony, when night blanketed the city, Leora walked alone onto the grand balcony. The lights below looked like a river of gold flowing through the streets. The moon hung bright above the palace walls. She heard quiet steps behind her and turned to see Ethan walking toward her. "You left before the dinner began," he said gently. "It was too loud," she answered. "I needed air." He stepped beside her, both of them looking out at the sky. "They are calling this a new age," he said. "Perhaps it is," she replied, "but new ages must be guarded with care." A soft breeze moved between them. Ethan placed his hands on the railing, staring at the lights below. "When I came here, I only wanted to do my job. Never thought I would find something worth staying for." She turned to him with a calm look. "You found more than work, Ethan. You found purpose." He nodded. "And you—" "I found trust," she said simply. Then her voice softened. "And something more." For a long moment, they stood in silence, hearing only the sound of the wind and the distant laughter from the city far below. Finally, Leora faced him fully. The moonlight touched her face, and her eyes glowed with quiet warmth. "Do you remember what I whispered to you that first night?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "I remember. You said your people claimed I was one of you." Her smile widened. "I did. But the truth has changed. Now they say something different." Ethan frowned with gentle curiosity. "What do they say now?" She stepped closer, until her voice became a soft thread between them. "They say you are mine." Her words did not sound like a command, only a promise. A promise spoken with heart instead of power. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, his chest rising and falling. Then he smiled the smallest of smiles. "I think that means I belong here," he said. Leora's hand found his. "It means we belong together for our world, for our people, and for the future that waits." Below them, the bells of Meridian began to ring again, soft and slow, marking the birth of a peaceful dawn. The city lights shimmered like stars brought down to earth, reflecting in their eyes. The world had changed, unity born from courage and trust. And as Ethan Ward stood beside the queen who had once been only a distant dream, not Horus, he knew that the whispers of destiny had finally become truth. Their story was no longer a secret between palace walls. It was written across the sky of a world rebuilt. A world that would remember them not just as ruler and guardian, but as two hearts that chose hope over fear and love over silence. The wind moved gently through the open air, carrying their silent promise toward the bright horizon where a new day waited in quiet awe.